I'm going to ask everyone in house and maybe say a couple of things like that they're currently working on, if that's okay. I've forced Robbie up out of the audience, so we'll start with Robbie, that might be a good idea.
It's the first time I've ever gate crashed a party and got away with it.
Should we start with you then, so if you let everyone know who you are and what you're doing right now?
I'm Robbie Morrison from 2018. I used to write Shakara and Nikolai Dante and The Odd Judge Dredd. Of late I've been writing a series of crime novels set in 1930s Glasgow. The second of which, Cast a Cold Eye, is currently 99p on Kindle for the rest of this month, so jump in there. I've got to get my plug in first. I'm working on a graphic novel called Heretic with Charlie Adler, which will hopefully be out by the end of the year.
Yeah, I'm Michael Carroll. I'm writing Judge Dredd, Dreadnoughts, Police X for 2018. Oh, Police X is over now, from my point of view. And Silver, it's a new thing coming up for 2018, art by Joe Curry. And it's sort of Project X's that we don't talk about. We all have those things that we don't talk about because we want to pretend it's secret, and not because we're terrified of it to happen. So, that's off me.
Hello, my name's Rob Williams, and I always get terrified when people say talk about what you're working on, not because I'm being secretive, because I realise I can't remember, which I think is more about my age more than anything else. But I write Judge Dredd, and I write other stuff. I've been writing a book called Petrolhead for Image the last couple of years, not last year, so I'm already writing, a couple of days.
I'm Ian Edgington, Judge Dredd, Scarlet Traces, Stickleback, Kingmaker, Brasso and stuff.
And I'm Stacey Whittle, and I currently write Guns for Monster Fun, and that's the first time I've said that. So my first question is, when I tell people that I've been writing comics, they ask me if I put the words in the balloons. So I was wondering how you describe what you do when people don't read comics and you have to explain.
But first of all, people write them. The artist writes and draws everything. But I tend to say a little like a film script, but then they don't know what a film script is. So I just say, well, imagine two people in a room, person A talks, person B written, and things like that, and they just want to play. Because it sounds like work then, it doesn't sound like
Yeah, I always like the kind of furrowed brow you get when you say, I write comics. People look at you as though that's not... Is that a real thing?
Yeah.
Can you actually do that? Which is a valid stance.
Yeah, I get the same. I get people look at me and go, "You write comics," and they're thinking, "No, he means read comics," but they don't realise that someone actually does create the stories. But I used to get the same look when I used to write romance novels for a living. People would go, "You write romance? Is everything okay at home?" And they won't ask that out loud, because then, if they do ask that, then I might tell them, and they really don't want to know. So yeah, but people generally don't grasp until you actually explain. No, someone has to make up their story. Oh, yes, I suppose they do. Yeah, so that's what we get.
I've given up. I just say, yes, I put the words in the wall. And then later on for throwing axes at me and stuff like this, with sound effects coming over. I usually try and describe it what Ian said. It's about writing a film script or a television script, but yeah, that usually, that goes over. That's kind of specialised as well. And I have had that people stare at you when you tell them comics and stuff. People make a living out of that.
Do they still do comics?
Yeah, that's the other one.
Yeah.
I had someone think that I wrote 4 comics, so I now claim all of Sarah Millican's back catalogue, which is fine.
Oh, actually, I've had that one time at a party. I was chatting to this girl that we I sort of knew her a wee bit. And obviously, the conversation couldn't have been going very well, because she looked at me and said, "Well, you're a comic, make me laugh." Which,
And you're at page 1.
Interior. So the other thing other people might not know about writing comics is that it often doesn't start with writing comics, it starts with pitching. And I think pitching is terrifying and awful and a craft in of itself. So I wondered if you had any hints or tips for me and the rest of the audience about pitching.
Yeah, it's you've got to be able to tell a story. It's very short. There's a thing called the elevator pitch. hypothetically you're trapped in an elevator with someone, and after you try the thing, can you get out through the? Yeah, you can't do that. You've got a tiny amount of time to say what your story is, and you get it over to the editor. When I do a pitch document for Tard, if it's a series, I will have it all worked out, and I'll break it down into smaller and smaller chunks. So you have the whole story worked out, and then you go, do a whole lot in one page, then do a whole lot in one paragraph, or even one sentence. If you can't do that bit, you shouldn't be doing the other bit. But telling a story in short form is harder than telling it in long form. Famously, the philosopher Blaise Pascal said, "I've written this letter long because I lack the time to make it short." You have to learn how to distill your story into. Someone says to you, "What is it about?" And you've got to be able to say, "It's about a cop in the future who's very hardline." That would be, Judge Dredd, obviously. But if someone says what it's about, and you're going, well, there's kind of this, and there's kind of that, and then it's a bad story. A great example is The Phantom Menace. I don't want to pick on Star Wars, but what is it about? And you ask someone that, and they go, well, it's about Anakin, no, it's about Obi-Wan, no, it's about Qui-Gon, no, it's about Darth Maul. There's no core. You need the core, and that's what your pitch is.
Yeah, ideally you go, someone says, what have you got? And you go, there's a giant shark eating people, and they're trying to stop the giant shark.
Perfect.
I mean, it's just like, it's there.
That's what you
One,
need.
you pretty much got a sentence, you probably have 2 sentences at most. To get someone, and they will, for all this, you can go, I've got this great story, this great set piece, these characters. If you can't actually get someone to at very least kind of go, I'd like to hear more after your first sentence or two, you're probably knackered, to be honest with you. So it's just trying to squeeze it into a short period of time.
I'll write everything down that's in my head, and then I'll kind of like cut and cut and cut and cut and cut until you've got like just a core left. And if that core doesn't work, you go, okay, and you just put it to one side and come back 6 months, and then you might have something, a bit more information, you can do something with it. But although, I mean, like Scarlet Traces, which is like, the Victorians used the leftover Martian technology. And
Exactly.
and that was it. But it's, for that one, there must be 20, 30 ideas that you pitch that people go, no. But also, it can be the timing. I've re-pitched stuff with a bit of a tweak a year or 2 later, and they're like, oh yeah, great, look, and it's like, you hated it the first time. It's kind of a bit, it's just like,
I got the exact thing with Mayflies for 2000D, which is a road trooper based story. I pitched it years ago to Matt, and then he came back to me years later and said, we're looking for something to do with road trooper that might be the age of a younger group. And I went, oh, here's the same idea. And he went, yes. So a good solid idea will find its time.
yeah, but you never know if the person at the other end is having a bad day or they're going through a crowd and stuff, just like you do. So you could just be catching them at the wrong time. But it is just paring things back to the bone, and if you can still get it to work, then that's good.
Yeah, and if you pair it back into something left, that means all you've got is a collection of ideas. But a collection of ideas is not a story. A seed is not an oak tree, especially if it's a sycamore seed, then you're really screwed. But you have to have something at the core, as Ian says, something absolutely solid to build on. But you don't start necessarily with that. You're right, that will form from the ideas. If you did your work as a creator company to build, and not just start the first theme you think of and see where it goes. Some people do that and they get away with it.
Because a long time ago, when I was first starting as well, I would think spectacle was all, and I wouldn't give much consideration to my character. So like, it's like, you've got this, and it's like, oh, and they go, yeah, but who's it about? What's the? And it's only, as you learn your chops over time, you actually realise it's somebody reacting to that world where we've got the marketing technology, or it's how that impacts on them. So that's how come in the stories. All right, it's all about how to flex on empire and how it's affected on people personally, and so that's where the story lies. Then it's not just this big picture. The big picture is the background, and it's the focus of the characters in the foreground.
I would usually try and keep it to an initial pitch, no more than a page. And you're trying to put across the idea for that story and the characters and the world, and tell a story that would be rounded, beginning, middle, and end. But also I usually try and drop hints that this has got legs. There's potential for this to go on and on after that. All in one page. It's terrible actually. Pictures are a page.
On that one page as well, I would have a sense for what the ending is. Because you need in that if it is like no more than one page, A4 probably is your initial pitch. You need a sense of start, middle, and end basically in that, because at least subliminally telling the editor, I know how to tell a story,
Yeah.
and at its most basic essence, they need start, middle, and end.
I was going to say, that part does get easier when you know the editor. Well, we've all worked with Matt Smith in 2008 for so long now, and we can say to Matt, well, I want to do X, and he will go, yeah or no, and that's it. Usually there's no more, oh, please let me have a go, and I promise it'll be good this time. But, because he knows straight away whether something will or will not work. But if you're pitched to a new editor, the story is what you're selling, as well as yourself. You've got to say, no, I can do this, and it can be very hard to write a pitch. And some people do a pitch like the back of a book blurb. You read the back of a book, that's not a pitch for an editor. That's a pitch for a buyer, if you like. The editor has to know that you know where the story is going, because if you was a writer, and this is just a generally true thing that people might disagree with, but they'd be wrong. If you don't know where how the story ends, how do you know when you're finished writing it? You can't just go, well, yeah, that's a good ending, that would work. Or you can't go, then she stops him in the back and says, you bastard, the end, which is how the Omen ends, Omen 3. You have to have an ending that you knew from the beginning, otherwise...
Unless, the exception that proves the rule is John Wagner, who always says, won't write synopsises or anything like that, because he doesn't want to know how it's going to end.
Which is absolutely true, but John has a certain pedigree behind him, I think, who you can trust that John knows what
Or he
he's
doesn't
doing.
want to give away his secrets.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
Well, certainly for me, I always have to know how it ends. And it doesn't mean you're always going to use that ending, but you have to have somewhere that you're aiming towards as you're writing and as you're plotting the story. And you can then get halfway and go, oh, it would be better if we went the other way, but at least then you are going towards something rather than just wandering around hoping you... Actually, it's like if you're a gold miner, you're far better off going to look for gold where the gold is likely to be than to stand in your back garden with a tin and go, I hope the meteorite made a gold lands here, because that's not going to work. So you have to put the work in that point of view.
I think my initial pitch for Nikolai Dante was pretty short. It was like, what if Han Solo got the lightsaber instead of boring old Luke Skywalker? And you have the womanizing, smuggling, hard drinking adventurer. Is this a more interesting character that took it off?
Yeah.
If any of you are on social media, there was a big hashtag recently about how to write comic strips, and people have lots of very, very particular ideas. And two of my best bits of advice I've ever read about writing come from Rob and Mike. Rob said recently, you just do what needs to be done, and then it's done.
I think it's not. I get really
Whatever
annoyed.
gets you through the night.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, exactly. Because there was a big thing on social media where certain people were getting very uppity and kind of saying, no, comic scripts have to be this, and comic scripts have to be, or they have to be that. And it seemed to be being prescribed by people who hadn't written a lot of comics as well, which is always annoying. But it's just like, there are no hard and fast rules, basically. It's just, whatever is comfortable for you and the artist, and it is, like, because Alan Moore famously writes very verbose, sort of like poetic, sort of long sort of panel descriptions. John Wagner writes dread grim, two words, be haikus. And you're talking about two of the best comic writers we've ever had. And they've got utterly different styles. So anyone who tells you comic scripts have to be like talking bullshit.
Yeah.
The other, you know this as well, my other favourite piece of advice is your advice, which is a writer's job is to tell the story to the artist. It's the artist's job to tell the story to everybody else.
Yeah.
And I wondered if you could just talk about that for...
You know me, since I can talk about anything for hours. Doesn't mean it's going to be any good. Yeah, no, that is something I realised working with PJ Holden many years ago. Is that if my script is me being clever and showing off, he's the only one who's going to see that. That doesn't work. I've got to give him the tools, as it were, to create the story. And I also have to trust him. And this is true of every artist I've worked with. They know more about the art than I do. So I would say, no, I want this to happen in the story. The way in which it's told, I would say, I want this to be close up, this should be, an over the shoulder shot, whatever. And they go, absolutely, and they just do whatever they want because they have an instinctive feel of which way it should go. If there's a fundamental mistake in the storytelling from my point of view, they can fix it. So they have a lot more free room, and rightly so, than I do. But yeah, you have to trust the artists. Sometimes they would get it wrong. I had one conversation many years ago where there's a terrifying demon that you don't see until the last panel, and for some reason the artist drew the terrifying demon like a giant chicken man. And all of a sudden, this horror story turned into this weird kind of silly cartoon thing, and ruined the whole atmosphere. And so we buried him under the apple tree. But he was like, "But no, but." So okay, that was the case where he didn't do what I told him to do. But for the most part, you have to trust the artist. And the way it works is that people look at a comic. The first thing they notice is the color, subliminally, if there's color. And then they notice the art, and then they notice the lettering leads them into the story. So our job as a writer is to lay the foundation, but if it wasn't for the rest of the people, they wouldn't have anything to look at. So they do a good job.
I did an issue of Suicide Squad once, and the script said there were 10-foot-tall super soldiers had entered the prison, and when the pages came back, fully drawn and inked, he'd drawn 100-foot-tall super soldiers. And then there were sequences with them running down corridors after our heroes, and it's like it's in a prison with low ceilings. How the fuck does this work? So sometimes what you say in the script and what comes back can be slightly erratic, shall we say.
I did a What If Hulk for Marvel, because it was in Marvel style, you do the plot and then the script that goes straight to pages later. So the guy got the pages, and basically because they could sell splash pages, every other page with a splash page, and so it's like, I can't write my story around what they've drawn because this is meant to be a 5-panel page, and it's just like a little inset and then a big thing with Hulk going, and it's like, no, the dialogue, and it was just horrible. That one, it was just,
I had the same, a similar thing with where I was writing Jennifer Blood for Dynamite, and the artist, writing artist, obviously just looked at the panel descriptions and drew the panels appropriately. It didn't take into account how much space for the dialogue. So there's a couple of cases where he drew nice big panels where there's only 2 words of dialogue, with the preceding panels on the page which are squashed at the top. I've got all the actual, 50, 60 word captions and so on. And now I have to rewrite my script to make it work your way. But most of the time you can trust the artist. Yeah.
that's why I think them companies I've worked with people I know, because a lot of like Disraeli, because we kind of we're sort of an old married couple, so we know each other kind of mindset, and that's kind of how it works. But so working with somebody new, sort of.
Yeah, we just did recently Judge Dredd A Better World, which is a prime example of this, and we worked with Henry Flint a bunch of times. And Henry is like a savant with comics storytelling. And Henry just basically sent an email, said, I might try something different this time. So we was initially sending through 5-panel page scripts. And what came back was Henry had basically was turning them into like 14-panel pages effectively. And every visual dialogue beat, he was giving an individual panel to, and he was breaking our scripts down. And then after we got about 4 or 5 issues into it, and we knew what he was doing, we started writing to that style. And in fact, the ending of Maitland's death, which spoilers, was basically a direct result of Henry breaking. Because I went, okay, so I know what we do. We have a pressure build of like a spread with 24 panels of beep, 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 and then you turn the page, and that would be the double page splash. So that's a prime example of you working with an artist who you have absolute trust with. Because normally, if you haven't worked with them before, they say, I might try something different. Your scrotum is shriveled, basically. You go, okay, where's this going? But like with someone with Henry Skill, I've worked with a bunch before, you go, yeah, you go for it. It's all going to be great.
Yeah, well, I think we'll go with Henry. I think for that type, I worked at Chicago with him, and I asked him what sort of stuff do you like to draw, and he basically said, I like to draw something different every page. And I just took it as a challenge and went, okay, I'll give you something different every page. It's always a collaboration. And I tend to view the script as you have to tell the story as best you can, but obviously nobody else sees the script beyond a few people. But I always try to tell you, you still have to put a little bit of flair into your writing when you're doing that. It's spark of the artist's imagination, so they bring something themselves to it, rather than, as does happen, what I would say is somebody phones in a job, or that can work with script or artwork, but it's, you're trying to get spark their imagination, so they add themselves into what you've already written. So what actually hits the page is a genuine collaboration between an artist and a writer, rather than what's the script and an author.
There could be a bit of us trying to make ourselves the most important part of the motor here, but we do have to trust the artists, but at the same time you have to rein them in, because John Higgins, who shall remain nameless, many years ago I did a short story with him, and at some point I got the art back, and I'm going, because I always get the art back sometimes, you don't always get it back, and then before it goes to printing, I read the script and I'm going. So I said, oh, what did you draw? He said, yeah, I didn't like your ending, so I drew my own ending. How does it work with what came before? And he goes, oh, you'll make it work. So I ended up spending twice as long rewriting everything to try and figure out what is he doing. And his work was absolutely beautiful. So I couldn't say to him, well, can you drop this panel or do that? No, so I had to work on why he did. And is it a better story because of that? No. But the story was better before he did his bit. But he was happier, and that's more important. So, but sometimes you have to go, yeah, this wasn't what I was expecting. And now and again, if you're doing a serialized story, the artist will do something and makes you go, well, I hadn't wanted the story to go there, but. And one example of that it hasn't come up yet is the second episode of the new Dreadnought coming out next month. There's a panel at the very end where just the look on the character's face made me go, I know where we could go in the future with that, and it's completely changed book 4 or 5 down the road that I was thinking of. So, you build on that.
The only thing that they don't like are horses. They really don't like horses.
My Johnny loves horses.
Oh, look.
Yes, there's always going to be an exception.
I mean, things in the eastern front, and it's in the west, and I can hear Tiernan Trevelyan screams all the way down.
And talking of artists doing something you weren't quite expecting, years ago I did a Nikolai Dante story called Russia's Greatest Sex Machine, or Love Machine, sorry, which was in the infamous sex issue of 2000 AD that somebody thought was a good marketing idea. And I'd written the story. The story was essentially Nikolai Dante getting off with a bearded woman, which is a long story as to how we get to that stage in the first place. And it went to Chris Weston, and I'd written the script, so it was all meant to be carry on stuff with, objects covering all the nudity. And essentially, Chris just drew it as if it was a 1970s porn. And because David Bishop, the editor at the time, sent me the artwork and said, "Can you do anything with that?" And I looked at it and so I just came back and said, no. That's why they ended up putting that particular issue in a bag. But it was, I looked at it and thought, this is did I write this? Actually, I didn't write it like this, but he just went. So at that point, that just had to go out like that.
I'd like to know what do you wish you had known when you started?
That the pay was shit.
Yeah, I when I mentioned the money. Yes. We don't have to pay Clark as much as we used to, which is nice. Yeah. It's we don't make money from writing comics. The worst thing is you can't come to a convention and send your sketches if you're not an artist. You can't say if someone comes up, you write us a paragraph and stuff. You as a haiku. Well, then they can ask. They're not going to get. So, that's annoying. The queues for the artists are always miles and miles and miles long. And the queues sneak past the writers' tables and they stand there trying not to look in the eye because they might buy a comic or something. Yeah. I'm just inside the door, by the way. They notice me.
From a practical point of view, I would say if you're starting out, keep an eye on royalties, because I think everyone starts out, which is a business side of it, not the craft side, but everyone starts out, you're just kind of lucky, happy to be doing the job. But as you go on, if you want to make this work as a living, you need to have little bits of money coming in from different projects you've done over time. And I would say you should have an eye on that type of stuff in the long term, you know, because that's why it's good to do a couple of create-your-own books here and there in your career. Because if all you're doing is writing 2000 AD or Marvel or DC, that's great when you're working for them, but if you're not working for them, the money isn't coming in from there. So basically, if you do a few create-your-own things as well, and it might not make huge money, but every now and again you get a nice check through and it's very handy. So it's just a cumulative thing of making writing work for a living for you. You need to have little bits of money coming in from different pots.
I mean, it's very different from when I started because it was still kind of that frontier, Wild West, you know, raucous drinking 3 o'clock in the bar kind of thing. And now it's very much, you have to be engaged across different social platforms. I mean, I'm a Luddite, so, but social media platforms and this and that, you know, it's you have to I think it's a completely different mindset and a very much a more business oriented mindset and things like that. Where
I mean, that is my next question, is that you can't just be a writer these days, can you? You've got to be not everyone, but a lot of people, if you're putting your own stuff out, is a marketing specialist, and you have to be promoting your own. I mean, I've seen a lot of it with you with Carroll.
Well, because it was create our own, so we felt like we had to, and we put a lot of effort into that, and we paid to have an animated trailer made, and things I've never done before. We really sort of, you know, to try and give it the best chance you can do. But you know, I think when you do a create your own book like that, you are effectively starting up your own small business, it's you put a lot of work into, which is outside of just making the comic. But the bottom line is the comic's got to be good, and people are going to like the comic. But it's hard work.
Yeah, the problem is, and that all takes time, and it's all time that you would rather be writing. That's what I've kind of found with a lot of, you know, all these things eat up time, and you end up, it's like, I really don't want to be doing this, but you feel you have to. And I don't actually know if you, I do wonder how much all being on Twitter and all that.
I don't think it helps sales at all.
No, I'm not
actually.
particularly sure. Especially not since.
Yeah, since Elon just destroyed it. Yeah.
It's just, there is a danger that you can lose track of the writing, and actually it begins to become less fun. So every now and again, you have to remind yourself, actually, this is fun. This is something you do, because you're too busy thinking of, like, oh, I should tweet, like, you know, I should tweet that my second novel is 99p on Kindle at the moment as a promotion. But there's always this wee thing in the back of your head, and you think, no, because it is different from being creative.
So working on with the social media, you have to be. I would try to think of social media as a white-only medium. As a creator, I will put stuff out there and try not to look at what everybody else is doing, because I get jealous. If I go on Twitter to post something and then I see a tweet from Robin Van Pensionhead, I'll be like, that's not fair, because it's really good and I want people to buy my stuff instead. Well, as well, sorry, but mainly instead. But it's
just a scorched earth policy to your competitors.
Exactly. I mean, it's not necessarily true that every other writer has nits, but they might do. The way it works is if you let yourself get too distracted by what other people are saying they're doing, that it's not quite the same as what they're actually doing, then you won't put your own energy into your own work. You start fighting in your head. You're fighting them, and in reality, the other creators are not your competitors. You've just got to work and get your material out there. And if you don't create the stuff to begin with, you can't sell it. It's very easy to get too distracted and to think, what is this character going to be called? You know what I need? A logo. I will learn how to use this software. I don't have that software. I'll go to a pirate site. Oh, I haven't seen that movie. And all of a sudden you're like, wait, what was I doing again? And you have to turn off the internet sometimes and turn off Twitter and just apply seat-up pants to seat-up chairs, apply fingers to keyboard, vomit it out onto the computer screen until you're actually done, and then try and sell it. And so many people doing their Kickstarters where you you're looking at this, wait, am I just paying him to write the thing that he's trying to sell? And then I've got to buy the thing afterwards? No. So you don't want to sell what you haven't got. You create the material and then write it, and you cannot create it if you're being distracted. And coming to conventions is great fun for meeting, people and so on. But this is a day that we're not getting angry. I mean, glib, but it is true that these are distractions. Some are necessary distractions, some are very fun, but you have to write if you want to be a writer. A writer writes. Have you ever seen the film Throw Mama from the Train? That's the main message. A writer writes. Talking about writing is not the same as writing. No more than talking about mountain climbing gets you to the top of the hill. You've got to do it.
I did have some quick fire questions, but I don't think they're suitable for Mike. But but I know we're running out of time now. I wanted to make sure everyone got a chance to ask any questions.
Lots of time. No, we don't.
No, we don't. Yes. So
I've got a friend who wrote a children's book. The publishing company didn't do much with it for a while, and he was able, a clause in the contract, to claim it back fully after 3 years. He'd illustrated and written it, he's put it back out there. He actually would disagree with you about conventions because he loves going to schools, he loves knitting everyone. He makes the same money from selling 600 of the books as he would from maybe 10,000 of them. So isn't the rise of the independent at its peak now? Isn't this the time to be more independent, to go to these conventions, to your books, to sell your wares?
But you may not. It's great for your friend, and we are all appropriately jealous and full of rage. But just because it works for one instance, I could name a dozen writers who tried that and it didn't work. They spend so much money and time going to events, trying to sell their stuff, and then they end up selling, 1 or 2 copies. So it doesn't always work. But it becomes, there's no clear model.
You can make good money from school visits and things like that.
That's why a lot of does children's books. So
I did kids books for years, and I made a living, and we ended up buying a house out of all the money I made from that. So it's we did very well. Not more than you get writing comics. But again, you have to have the product to sell to be able to sell the product. You have to do the writing at some point. So every day you spend out, in the library or in school, it is a day that you're not creating. There has to be a balance. So, but well done to your friend.
was there any other questions? Yeah.
I've spoken to a few writers, and you try and get them to read your own work, maybe to get a quote. And a lot of writers say they don't read other people's stuff, just in case they subconsciously steal something from it. A few years down the line, they'll write something which is coming to their head because they've read somebody else's. How do you guys feel about other people thrusting their work upon you?
I don't do that because I cannot guarantee that in 5 years' time you pitch me something and I go, ooh, that idea about cancer octopuses, and you might go, that's my style. And so it's just like best of it, you don't look at it because it's just nowadays, again with social media, things can blow up so quickly that it's just like the best is just like, no, I'm sorry. Pitching to an editor or an agent or something. It's my feedback could help a little bit, but it's like I can't get you anywhere. We are just cogs. So you do need to talk to. Thank you very much. So it's very relevant. Pitching it to an editor and stuff is the better thing to do. Somebody who's got a bit of power.
I mean more we're trying to literally have someone give you a quote rather than help you by selling
Well,
anything.
they'll give you a quote on the
Yeah.
You'll get a quote. We give you a quote on the published thing, but if it's not done yet, it's still.
Well, I'm talking, maybe an issue of what I write. So, like I say, if you were, I don't do that just in case.
So no, I give a quote on like a published issue, but if on like a picture story or anything, just.
Yeah, if someone says sort of occasionally you get a message out of the blue from Facebook, I've got this great Judge Dredd story, you go, well, you should pitch it, man. It's no good. Which is different, I know that's different from what you're saying.
Yeah, it's a bit of a catch-22. I sort of agree all that time, but one of the ways when I was getting into comics and I'd written scripts, I went along to a signing in Glasgow that John Wagner and Alan Grant and a bunch of artists were at, and I asked if Alan Grant would read my script. I didn't ask John Wagner because he was too forbidding. And Alan took it away, read it, came back and commented, gave me my thing, says, you know, I like it, send it to the editor, tell him I liked it, and you know, it never got bought, it's not better, it wouldn't happen, but he did.
Alan was an editor as well, wasn't he?
That,
So
yeah.
he had that extra string to his bow.
And then we had a correspondence and, you know, became friends and stuff, and, you know, I'd say, and I know Alan helped out a lot of other people as well, so that's that thing of like, I would feel this like, you don't, I know what you're saying about reading stuff and all, but at the same point, people did that with me, you know. And the danger, of course, is you can get overwhelmed by it.
Well, one of the problems on the other side is that if you pitch a story to a writer and say, I've got this idea, what do you think? They are going to have read an awful lot of stuff and they're going to go, that's been done. And the problem is that can put you off. But just because the basic idea has been done doesn't mean that your version of it won't be new and brilliant and exciting. So you have to trust in yourself and do it anyway. But yeah, I mean, it is a tricky one. I'm sorry. Trust in your own work.
Sorry, did you have a question? What should I have one? I think it's how much is it? About 5 minutes. There's one last question.
Sure. I was quite curious with pitching to Matt Smith, the Tharg, getting an idea of like how did you manage to feel him out and sort of get something that you think would be along his lines? Like, how did you figure that out?
You mean initially?
Yeah, and just getting into the process of understanding Matt Smith's own personal taste. So he's quite mercurial, I always find. At least that's what he seems.
Well, you still get, I mean, I was saying to Ian just before we came on, I pitched something to Matt, as much as I've done a lot of Dread the last few years, and I pitched the big Dread story to him, and Matt passed. You know, he still passes on stuff, you know what I mean? So, I think you've got a sense of, for the most part, I think if he keeps giving you work, he trusts you, and, you know, he's a bit Victorian dad, right?
Yeah.
You don't get effusive kind of
He's a man of very few words.
Yeah. Good work or something.
That's a good one.
Thanks. I don't think I've ever had a longer email from Mark Morrison.
One time he said to me, happy to have that in the plug.
My favourite one I got from Keith was 2 words. It had disgusting, well done.
Well, that's 3 words, but
It might not be well done. But it was 2 was that, as I thought, oh.
It's like, yeah, I mean, basically, it's like pitching anything really, in as much as you think you've got a good story that you're interested in, you pitch it, but you don't know for certain. So, but you get I mean, weirdly, because we're all old now, we've been working with Matt, probably all of us, for about 20 years, because I think he's been editor for about 20 years. Yes, you never feel totally comfortable with it.
that's the way it should be. If you start feeling comfortable, then you won't do your best work. We're trying to impress this guy who's younger than us, or very younger than me, trying to impress him and trying to make him think, oh, that's good. That's the way it should be.
The sad thing about 2008 as well is the slush pile there. It's closed, isn't it? And it has been for quite some time. So an option that a lot of writers did use and managed to get started isn't there anymore, which is quite sad, really. That was a really bum note to end this on.
But the thing is, don't stop writing. You've got to.
Robbie's book is not.
Oh yeah, which is excellent. I haven't read it, but it's still excellent.
Have you got copies of Petrol Head?
We got the Petrol Head trade paperback is out June the 5th, but we got copies through this week, so we have. You can beat the shops if you come to our city. Thank you very much.
I'm
God
waiting
bless
for
you.
my pre-order though. Mike, what have you got with you? Should you let's plug and then we'll.
Bunch of old progs I'm selling for next to nothing on my table.
Lovely. There we go. So please come and visit everybody, and thank you very much for being in the room. And please say thank